Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back with the next Top 20 for 2020. This time I'll be ranking my top 20 favorite Stephen King films. The Top 20 for 2020 series was co-created by myself and Jason from Horrific Nightmares. Twice a month, we randomly select a theme and rank our top 20 favorite horror films that pertain to that theme. We can only feature 20 films, no honorable mentions, and we can only include one film per franchise. In addition, Jason and I only feature films we actually own on physical media. The randomly selected theme this time around was Stephen King films, or Stephen King adaptations. I easily chose about 25 films, and then had to narrow it down to 20. As with all of my other rankings, I will begin with my least favorite, number 20, and count down to my favorite, number 1. Of course, please keep in mind, this is just my personal opinion. So, here we go. My top 20 for 2020. Of my top 20 favorite Stephen King films. Coming in at number 20 is Salem's Lot, the movie. Now, there is a difference between Salem's Lot, the movie, and the miniseries. Obviously, runtime. The miniseries runs a lot longer. And while the miniseries, not surprisingly, includes more from the book, I prefer the faster pace of the movie. At number 19 is sort of an obligatory pick. It was Stephen King's first novel and his first film adaptation, Carrie. Coming in at number 18 is one of Stephen King's dollar babies. It's The Boogeyman. It's included here on this Stephen King's Night Shift Collection VHS release. The Boogeyman is actually one of my favorite short stories written by Stephen King, and it was featured in his very first book of short stories, Night Shift. This one is probably the most obscure on this entire list. I love that cover, too. Next up, at number 17, is another obligatory pick. It's The Shining. I know Stephen King is not a fan of this adaptation, but it's definitely a classic. And there's something about this movie that's actually comforting to me. I don't know. At number 16 is Children of the Corn. I've probably watched this movie a lot more than some of the others on this list. It used to come on TV a lot, and it was one of those movies I just always watched every time it was on. This one is also based on a short story featured in Stephen King's Night Shift. Coming in at number 15 is Cujo. Let's be honest, not a lot happens in this movie, and not a lot really happens in the novel, I guess. But Stephen King also doesn't remember writing the novel because he was completely drunk at the time. There are also no chapter stops in the book. It's just one long run-on story. What really elevates Cujo for me is the acting of Danny Pintorro. His performance was fantastic. At number 14 is The Night Flyer. I find this one to be very underrated. It seems that no one ever talks about it, and it's another well-done vampire story by Stephen King, despite being overshadowed by Salem's Lot. Coming in at number 13 is The Mist. The Mist is based on a novella featured in Stephen King's Skeleton Crew. It was then released separately. This movie adaptation does change the ending, and boy, what an ending it is. It's also worth mentioning, The Mist features quite a few actors from the Walking Dead series. Coming in at number 12 is the only film Stephen King actually directed himself, Maximum Overdrive. It's another movie based on a short story by Stephen King, and it has a really good soundtrack. Plus, Emilio Estevez and this really awesome truck. At number 11 is It. This is the original 1990 miniseries, and it's sort of important that I'm showing this release. This is the 2-disc VHS edition featuring more footage than the DVD and Blu-ray releases of the film. We're into the top 10 now with a horror anthology film based on the work of Stephen King. It's Cat's Eye. This one is significant in that a cat is literally the main character of the film. My favorite of the segments is Quitters Inc., starring James Woods. That story is also from Stephen King's Night Shift. Coming in at number 9 is Thinner. This is a movie, again, that doesn't get enough attention, and it doesn't get enough credit. It's just so much fun. It's one I find myself watching every time it's on TV, and I love it. At number 8 is an adaptation I think most of us can agree is a classic. It's Misery. The performances in this movie are fantastic all around, and I want to give special mention to Richard Farnsworth, who I absolutely love in this film. And obviously, Kathy Bates won an Oscar for her role as Annie Wilkes, and it was well deserved. At number 7 is not only a Stephen King film, but it's a John Carpenter film, Christine. John Carpenter directed this movie based on the Stephen King novel, and I just sort of realized it's basically a slasher. It just so happens that the killer is a car. Christine feels like a Carpenter film, and the score is great. I even own it on vinyl. Coming in at number 6 is Silver Bullet. I ranked this one very high on my top 20 werewolf films list. It's a werewolf slasher film starring Corey Haim and Gary Busey. What's not to like? We are now into the top 5 with a movie that used to be one of my all-time favorite horror films, Pet Sematary. Admittedly, I have not yet watched the remake, although I do own it on Blu-ray, so I can't compare the two. But this original is a classic to me, and Zelda is probably one of the scariest movies in horror history. I love the book, I love the movie, and it's number 5 in my top 20. Coming in at number 4 may be the movie that's actually the closest adaptation to the original novel. It's Gerald's Game. Now, as you can see, this here is the original novel. The thing is, though, I made my own DVD release, as you can see right here, because, as of right now, there is no official release of this film. I needed to have it in my collection, though, because not only is this one of my all-time favorite Stephen King novels, it's obviously one of my favorite Stephen King films. Until it is officially released on DVD or Blu-ray, this edition will have to do. So, I'm happy with it for now. Seriously though, guys, if you're a fan of this book or just Stephen King in general, check this out. It's streaming on Netflix, and as I said, it's one of, if not the closest, Stephen King adaptation. In third place is Creepshow 2, another horror anthology based on Stephen King's work. I'm expecting to see the original Creepshow on a lot of people's lists, but I've personally always preferred the sequel. I love the wraparound story with the Venus flytraps. They eat meat. Old Chief Woodenhead is great. The Hitchhiker is awesome. Thanks for the ride, lady. Thanks for the ride. But if I had to choose a favorite, it would probably be The Raft. Regardless, every segment in Creepshow 2 is top-notch for me, which is why it is my third favorite Stephen King film. Now this is where it gets tricky, because my top 2 are virtually interchangeable, but I had to make a choice. So coming in at number 2 is The Shawshank Redemption. Remember guys, I base my rankings on my personal favorites, not necessarily what I consider to be the best films. If I were ranking them based on that, then The Shawshank Redemption would easily be number 1. As a matter of fact, The Shawshank Redemption is considered by many to be the greatest film ever made. They may be right. It's a masterpiece. It also features, in my opinion, maybe one of the greatest endings of all time. Those last 2 words are everlasting. But despite all that, based on personal opinion and a lot of nostalgia, my number 1 favorite Stephen King film is Stand By Me. Stand By Me is the film adaptation of The Body, a short story by Stephen King, and the film was directed by Rob Reiner, who also directed Misery. Although Stand By Me is not specifically a horror film, it does have certain horrific elements, and actually one of the most disturbing images in any film, for me. I'm sure most of you can guess what that is if you've seen it. It's a movie about childhood, a coming-of-age story. It's extremely poignant and powerful, especially the narration by Richard Dreyfuss. Stand By Me is one of those movies I can watch over and over and over again. And I do. For all these reasons and more, Stand By Me is my number 1 favorite Stephen King film. So there you have it, guys, my top 20 for 2020 of my top 20 favorite Stephen King films. What do you think? Comment below and let me know. Also, be sure to check out Jason's top 20, and as always, we invite you to participate as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Be kind, subscribe.